Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we're going to take a look at One Night Revolution from Indie Boards and Cards. Now the name, or part of that name, may sound familiar to you. One Night Revolution is a re-implementation of One Night Ultimate Werewolf from Bezier Games. They actually licensed out the core gameplay of One Night Ultimate Werewolf, brought it over to the Resistance universe instead of the Werewolf universe, and changed a few, I would say, integral things while leaving the core gameplay. Now, if you're not familiar with my history with One Night Ultimate Werewolf, there is a review on my channel. I'm not even going to bother to link to it because, and I'm actually debated taking it down, where honestly, it's one of the only reviews, probably the only review I've left up that I'm not totally happy with. My opinion of that game has drastically changed. I really, really do not like One Night Ultimate Werewolf. However, I had been told that there were some significant changes to One Night Revolution that would make me like the game very, very much more. And in fact, I knew right off the bat I was more inclined to like it because it was set in the world of the Resistance with some Resistance-type elements in it. And Resistance is a game that I really, really enjoy, especially Resistance Avalon. So, did this one live up to my expectations? Did it actually make the One Night system better? Let's take a look, and then we'll come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, let me give you a quick rundown of One Night Revolution. This is a team-based competitive game for up to 10 players. In this game, you are either going to be a rebel or an informant. If you are a rebel, your goal at the end of the game, and the game takes place over one night, hence the name, your goal at the end is, together with the other rebels, successfully accuse and oust or kill, or whatever it's supposed to be, one of the informants. If you can do that, even if there are other informants still in play, as long as you can kill one of them, or nab one of them, and I guess they squeal on the others, then you and the other rebels will win the game. If you're an informant, your goal is to not let that happen. Have one of the good guys get falsely accused, then the rest of you and your informant buddies are away scot-free, and you all will win together as a team if there's more than one informant. That may not be the case. So, as far as setup goes, each player is going to get this little cheat sheet which describes the different specialist roles, which I'll get to in a minute. You are going to take a number of ID cards in a different dispensation depending on the number of players. There are always going to be 3 of the informant roles, and all of the cards look the same, so all the informants have this very dour-looking bald gentleman, and they look red, and they have the spy symbol from the Resistance on the bottom part of it. So there's always going to be 3 of those in play, but the number of rebels is going to change depending on the number of players. So I have this set up for a 6-player game, so that means that there are going to be 6 rebels out in play, and the rebels, that's actually an informant as well. They look like this white-haired woman with a blue hue in the background and the Resistance fist on the bottom. So you're going to shuffle all those tiles up, and you're going to deal them out to each of the players, and the remaining 3... So again, this is a 6-player game, so there'll be 6 tiles out to the players, and then the remaining 3 are put on the headquarters. So what this means is that once you get your tile, you're going to secretly look at it without showing the other players. But this means that there may not necessarily be the number of rebels and informants that you're hoping for. There may actually be all 3, by chance, informants can be in the headquarters, and everyone else could be rebels, but you're not entirely sure at the beginning of the game. You are also going to decide what specialist roles to use. There's a number of different specialist roles. There's actually 8 to be precise. And you're going to choose which ones you're going to play with, and some of them you can actually double up on. There are some suggestions in the book, or you can just make your own however you want. But you're going to decide which specialist roles to use, and first you're going to put out these tokens out here in the center of the table. This is going to remind people which roles are in play, and when you get to the accusation phase at the end, you can start chucking these at people, not literally, or literally, whatever you want to do, in order to either accuse someone of being a certain role and potentially being either an informant or a rebel, or you can claim one for yourself and say, hey, I'm this thing right here, and chances are you're not going to flip it to the informant side, unless you're really playing an interesting game. But once you decide what specialties to use in the game, you're going to shuffle them up and deal them out to the players. And now I will go through each of those just so you have an idea. Now, you're not going to know totally what I'm talking about when I'm talking about these. That'll become clear in a moment when I take you through the actual gameplay. But the observer has the power to have nothing. They don't do anything. They're just a villager, if you want to use werewolf terms. The investigator gets to look at another player's ID. The analyst gets to view another player's specialist card. The thief. Now, this is one of the cards, the roles, or the specialists, that changes depending on what you originally started as. If you are originally a rebel, then as the thief, you switch your ID with another player's ID and then view your new ID. If you started off as an informant, you just view your ID. The reassigner. If you are a rebel, you switch two other players' IDs. If you're an informant, you switch a rebel player's ID with an HQ informant ID, one of the ones in the center of the table, and you skip this action if there is no HQ informant ID. You'll know this for a fact. The revealer. Flip another player's ID face up. If it's an informant, flip it back down. Otherwise, you leave it face up. The signaler. If you're a rebel, you tap the player on your immediate left or right. If you are an informant, you tap an informant on your immediate left or right. Now, if you know for a fact that one of them is not the informant, you just skip this action. And finally, the confirmer. You get to view your ID. So once you have all of this setup finished, here's how the game's going to work. One player randomly at the beginning of the game is going to be the team leader, and they are going to start off the night process by which they're going to read a little script in the book. If you're familiar with One Night Ultimate Werewolf, there's no app to do this for you, but it's very simple, so the team leader is just going to go ahead and do it. Or actually, I'm sorry, the official name for it is the controller. The controller is going to start off saying, everyone, close your eyes. So everyone at the table will close their eyes. Then he or she will say, informants, open your eyes. Informants, look around and make sure you know all the other informants. So at this point, only the informants will open their eyes, glance around, see who the other informants are, and then close them. Now bear in mind that this may be yourself. You may be the only informant. There may be no informants by really random chance if all the informants are in the headquarters. So there's anywhere from 1 to 3 of them, but you will know who they are and where they are at the table. After a few seconds, the controllers aren't going to say, informants, close your eyes. Now everyone's eyes should be closed. Then you are going to get into the specialist actions that I just described. Starting with the controller is going to take whatever their specialist action is. At this point, the controller will be the only one with their eyes open, and the only one of these two cards they're allowed to look at is their specialist card. They cannot look at their ID card. From this point forward, when it's your turn, you can only look at your specialist card to remind yourself of what your specialist action is. Then you are going to take that action, which could be looking at another player's ID. It could be swapping them. It could be doing nothing. It could just be looking at your own, and so on and so forth. Once you are done taking your specialist action, you're going to close your eyes and say, task complete. And that is signaling the next player in clockwise order to take their specialist action. So then they're going to do it. And if you do have one of the actions that has you physically moving things around, you'd have to be as careful as possible to not let let anyone notice your movement, because they strongly suggest no table thumping in this game, or at least I'm strongly suggesting that because it's really stupid. So this is going to go all the way around until finally the player on the controller's right, the last player, takes their action and says, task complete. At that point, everyone's eyes should be closed, except the controller gets to reopen their eyes and take one last look at their ID card. They get a free look at their ID card once everything is done, which means that they are the only one at the end of that round, or that night phase, that can be sure that they know what they are. Unless, of course, the last player in line happened to have the card that says you get to look at your own ID. That would be the only exception to that. But everyone else is fair game if there are reassigners and thieves in play to have their stuff switched around. Finally, the controller will say, all tasks complete, everyone open your eyes. And now you are going to go into the specialist declaration phase, which is where everyone's going to declare, as I described before, what they are. You can say, well, I'm the signaler. I'm the signaler, and I tapped on this person's shoulder. At which point someone, and you're not bound to be truthful with this. At which point someone can say, whoa, I was the signaler. Or, no, hey, wait a minute, did anyone else feel any taps? No one felt any taps? Oh, well then, you must be the informant, or, something like that. Or you can say, well, you're not claiming anything. You must have been the thief, and I bet you switched things. And I bet you're the informant too, and so on and so forth. People can keep grabbing tokens. People can deny them. If someone takes the investigator, someone can say, no, I'm the investigator, and so on and so forth. You do this for a very limited amount of time, and then it goes to the discussion and deduction phase, which will hopefully be an even more limited amount of time. This is where you actually talk about who you think is what. The rebels are trying to suss out the informants. The informants are trying to push suspicion onto the rebels and say, well, no, I'm telling the truth, and he's obviously lying. Or she said, no, I'm telling the truth, you're lying. Well, if you say that, and if you're claiming this, but I did this, and I switched these people, and so on and so forth. It goes on and on and on, and so hopefully, mercifully, someone puts an end to it and says, okay, probably the controller says, okay, that's enough discussion, now we are going to vote. Everyone is simultaneously, at the count of 3, going to point at another one of the players. Whoever gets the most votes is eliminated. If that person was one of the informants, then all the rebels immediately win the game. Now, if it was anyone else, then the rebels lose and the informants will win the game. If there was a tie for a number of people being pointed to, both of those people are going to die. And if no player gets at least 2 votes, then no one is terminated. That, however, is still bad for the rebels. If no informant is terminated, regardless of if no one is, even if one of the rebels is not killed, then it still ends in a win for the informants. Now, remember that very rare situation I said where it's possible that all the informants are in the headquarters and none of the players are actually informants? If by some miracle all the players agree that this is actually the case and everyone is actually rebels, then what you can do is just say, okay, well, everyone point at the person to your left in a circle. So everyone just keep pointing around. In that way, no one is going to get 2 votes, and no one will be eliminated. And then when it gets to the final reveal, you reveal all the tokens in the middle. Obviously, this was not the case. And if all 3 of them were informants, then all the rebel players would collectively and cooperatively win the game together. But if they were wrong, then whoever's the informant's going to win. And that's One Night Revolution. It's not really any more complicated than that. Let's get to my final thoughts. The theme of One Night Revolution, I think, would be better than One Night Ultimate Werewolf because of the fact that it's resistance and spies versus rebels. It makes more sense to me than a bunch of crazy, kooky villagers doing stuff to each other and there's some werewolves hiding amongst them. It just does seem to fit better. Now, the theme is not helped very much by the artwork in the game. Now, I think the artwork is actually good and solid, and the appearance of it and the graphic design of all the tiles and stuff is nice and clean, and I dig that, except that it is the exact same artwork on every single tile, and there is no artwork on the specialist cards on the other side. That kind of takes away from the theme a bit. Though, to be fair, the original Resistance was like that. Well, actually, no. The original Resistance did have different artwork on the roll cards. It was just the rest of the game that looked drab. Now, in this case, they just made a bunch of clones of the informants and of one particular rebel. So that's a bit of an odd thing. But I do think that, again, the whole sense of suspicion and distrust lends itself more to the Resistance world than to the werewolf world. So, okay. And the components are fine. They're of okay quality as far as the actual physical bits about them. So, moving on to the actual gameplay. What are the core differences if you skipped the overview? The core differences are there's no more app, and there's no more need for an app because the night phase is much simpler and more streamlined. All it is you say, everyone close your eyes, informants find each other. Now, everyone do your special action in order. And once everyone's done with that, and there is some movements and shuffling, but you don't really need to do any of that stupid table thumping or have the need for an app with loud music. And God, I hated that when people stomp the table and stuff when they're on a table near me at a gaming meetup. So that's one of my huge pet peeves about One Night Ultimate Werewolf. So I think those are improvements over the other game. And the fact that they are separating the special ability of the characters from their role, and in that regard making it a bit more like the Resistance, like spies and rebels, and then you have a special power. I like that separation of things as well. That's another positive in this game. So, overall, I do like this game better than One Night Ultimate Werewolf. But maybe this sounds harsh. That's a bit like saying I really prefer getting punched in the face as opposed to getting hit with a baseball bat in the face. I really do not like either of these games, and One Night Revolution is only slightly better. This is just such a boring and pointless game to me. And I know what you're saying, Nick, how can it be boring when it's just like all this excitement and tension of who is who, and especially One Night Ultimate Werewolf. By the way, I'm considering this my final review of One Night Ultimate Werewolf as well, but and how could you say that game is boring too? And it's boring because there is no stress or tension. Nothing ever matters. Nothing ever, there's no like deduction and like edge of your seat, like who is who? I can't wait to figure it out. But he did this and he did this, but he's got to be this. No one cares. It's completely random and nonsensical. Like, people will take the reassigner ability or the thief ability and switch things around for no particular reason. And then you get up in the daytime phase and you're like, oh, well, I don't know. I was this, but I guess I'm not this anymore. And if you were the informant, you just try to lie the best you can. But sometimes you don't even know if you should be lying or why. And I understand that there are people who enjoy that about these games. I can't. I cannot enjoy it. I can't enjoy it in the face of other incredible social deduction games I've played in the past year. Spyfall, which you might say, oh, well, Spyfall doesn't have a lot of like structure and gameplay. Well, no, it does. You suss out, you ask important questions. How you form questions in that game is incredibly crucial and critical, and you follow the trail of clues that people give to you. There's nothing like that in this game. Even Mafia de Cuba, a game that came out recently, yeah, to a degree, that game doesn't have a lot of information to go off of, but you're choosing your roles. It's very deterministic in that regard, and knowing and trying to get into the heads of the people and what they chose and what their plan is and working together with the other people. This game is just random nonsense. The signaler, tapping on people's shoulders, I guess I kind of understand why that's in there, but it's just to sow chaos is what it seems like to me. They're just, and even a game that this was sort of based on, quote unquote, not One Night Ultimate Werewolf, but The Resistance. That game, I would play this every time over this game. The Resistance is awesome. It's a really great, well-oiled machine. It works well. It's simple. It keeps things simple. This was really just trying to capitalize on the inexplicable popularity of One Night Ultimate Werewolf and trying to translate that into the Resistance universe and have that lightning strike twice in the same spot. But no, it's really, maybe it will. Maybe this will be a huge and popular game, and I'll be in the minority on this one again. But to me, this is just random, throwing tiles around, doing a special power that doesn't really mean anything, and rinsing and repeating. There's no excitement, there's no tension, there's no stress, there's no amazing deductive aha moments. It's all just, okay, everyone point. Oh, yay, okay, let's do it again, I guess. Can we quit this game now? That is what I felt every time I played this game. One Night Revolution from Indie Boards and Cards. Indie Boards and Cards did make a fantastic game that involves the Resistance. It's not this one. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.